Hi guys, this video is about natural selection, which is an explanation for how populations of organisms change over time. Charles Darwin is known for his development of the theory of natural selection. Charles Darwin lived from 1809 to 1882, and he's well known for an expedition that he took starting in 1831. It lasted 5 years, and it was on a ship called the HMS Beagle. And on that trip, among other places, he visited the Galapagos Islands, and there's some really cool wildlife species there that he observed, and through his observations of that wildlife, he proposed the theory of natural selection, which basically says that organisms that are best suited to their environment are more likely to survive and reproduce, and when they survive and reproduce, they're going to be passing on those characteristics that help them survive and reproduce, so over time, the population is going to change. There was another individual, Alfred Wallace, that was developing very similar ideas.
But Darwin gets most of the credit because of his publication in 1859 of the book On the Origin of Species by Means of Natural Selection, which documented his observations and theory. An important distinction to make before we go forward is the difference between a species and a population. So a species is a group of similar organisms capable of interbreeding. So giraffes are a species, and bullfrogs are a species. Populations are a group of organisms of the same species who live in the same geographical area. So there's lots of different populations of giraffes that live in different places. There's lots of different populations of bullfrogs that live in different places. Natural selection occurs on the population level, but over time accumulation in changes in populations might become apparent at the species level. So the main points of natural selection are shown on this slide. First of all, species have the potential to increase in numbers exponentially, so they can grow exponentially. Populations are genetically variable due to mutations and genetic recombination, and those are going to happen in meiosis. Third, individuals compete for a finite supply of resources required for life. So finite means that there's limited resources. Fourth, changing environments select for specific genetic phenotypes. Remember, phenotypes are the physical characteristics. So certain physical characteristics are going to be better for survival and reproduction than others. Those organisms that have the favorable adaptations are going to survive, reproduce, and pass on their alleles or their genes for those favorable characteristics. The accumulation and change in favored alleles leads to changes in species over time. And here's an example. And in this example, we're looking at bacteria. So we have this original population of bacteria that all look pretty much the same. But mutations create variation in the bacteria, so they look kind of different after mutations. Some mutations are fatal. So this one's fatal. That's going to die. But then those that survive are going to reproduce. And more mutations in those that reproduce are going to happen. Some of those mutations are going to make bacteria that are resistant to an antibiotic. So this blue variant is resistant to antibiotics. And in this line here, the bacteria are treated with antibiotics. So all the ones that aren't resistant to the antibiotics are going to die. Then this one that was resistant to the antibiotic is the only one that's going to reproduce. So now the whole population is going to be resistant to antibiotics because that's the only genes that were able to be passed on to offspring. So in species like bacteria that reproduce really quickly, you can see natural selection in action really fast. And so in class, we're going to look at some examples and work through some activities where we get to look at different examples of natural selection. So make sure that you got everything for your guided notes. If you didn't, take a minute and go back through the video again. And like I said, we'll apply this in class tomorrow. Have a great night.